Good day and a very warm welcome to everybody. Many thanks to all of you for accepting our invitation for the beginning of our annual Angola Oil and Gas Energy Series on its second edition. I also extend a very and special warmest welcome to our very talented and exceptional panelists today, who have agreed to share with us their professional experiences and challenges as they progress and succeed with this traditionally male-dominated business environment. They are indeed breaking some barriers, and for sure, we are all here to support and be part of this success. I'm honored and privileged to be the chairman of this organization and be part of the fantastic team working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this a reality. As I mentioned, today marks the beginning of our Angola Oil and Gas Energy Series with this webinar on women in the energy, which will be followed by 3 other webinars, namely Empowering the Next Generation, Angola Local Content and Supply Chain Progress, and finally, oil and gas procurement in the value chain. All these webinars will culminate with our Angola Oil and Gas Service Technology Conference, which will take place in Luanda between 23rd and 25th of November this year. Local content will again be the core of our 2021 AOTC program, where you will hear addresses from government officials, industry experts, and from other private sectors discussing the key issues affecting Angola oil and gas sector today. For the webinar today, which is about to start, we elected to bring for discussion a topic that has always been present in our lives. Women, as we know, are the foundation of our lives. They are unquestionably the reason for us all to be here. Unfortunately, for many years, as we know, we men thought that they should only have a supporting role rather than be part of our working environment. Well, things are changing. They are showing tremendous perseverance and commitment. Although today women represent only something between 18 to 25% of the oil and gas industry global workforce, we are now witnessing throughout all organizations around the world a collective effort to eradicate the unconscious bias that is stagnating or has been stagnating their careers' development. Thus, we are here to support this movement, if I may call it so. And I'm very happy and honored to invite you all to join today to hear from some of the best leaders in the industry as we discuss the challenges, opportunities that they've been facing throughout their careers. I would like to conclude my address by highlighting that Angola Energy Series is indeed a platform for sharing of knowledge, information, ideas, solutions, and most importantly, purposefully, business interactions. Note also that AOTC is hosted under the high patronage of the Angolan Ministry of Mineral Resources and Petroleum, with the co-organization of GEP, Global Events Partners, an events organization based in UK, and ACIPA, the Angola Oil and Gas Service Companies Association. Once again, many thanks to all of you for accepting our invitation to be part of our program today and the sessions coming ahead in the next months until November. We are very confident that you'll have an enjoyable day. As we were preparing for Come On Live, I heard some fantastic histories and I'm really excited with the background of our panelists. So good luck, enjoy, and God bless you all. Thank you. Without much ado, I will now hand over to our fantastic moderator, Carol Knuckle, and I hope I pronounced Carol's surname right, and which will be leading our webinar here on. Carol, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Braulio. You did a great job of pronouncing my surname. I know Arabic is not an easy language, but actually Nakhle, which is my surname in Arabic, means palm tree. So like this, you will not forget my name. Whenever you see a palm tree, you can think of me as well. But thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. And I want to welcome everyone on board today's webinar. Before we dig into this topic, we thought it would be interesting if each one of us introduce ourselves and give the participants a snapshot of a career. And among the panelists, we have a very long career. And I'm going to start with myself. I'm originally Lebanese, but I moved in the UK in 1998 to pursue my postgraduate studies. So I did my first degree in Lebanon economic science, and it was in a French system, but I went to the UK and I did masters in finance and then PhD in energy economics. And that started my whole career in the energy industry, particularly in the oil and gas industry. And I worked with a very wide range of stakeholders, from academia to being a special parliamentary advisor in the UK, international organizations such as IMF, World Bank, Commonwealth Secretariat. And I also worked in the private sector with major oil and gas companies, including Statoil and Eni. And then in 2012, I felt there was one thing I did not do then, and that was starting my own business. And this is where I founded Crystal Energy. And I have absolutely no regret. Of course, it's never an easy thing to set up your own business, especially in such a global, complex, and quite competitive industry, let alone being male-dominated industry. But I tell you, I thrive when I'm faced with challenges. As for my link to the topic of the webinar, in 2007, I set up a group, non-for-profit group, which is called Access Women in Energy, and still out there and flourishing, with the aim of providing a platform where both men and women, female energy experts, meet, exchange ideas, do some brainstorming, and talk about timely energy topic, because our aim was to break this kind of gender tag that people can allocate to you when you are part of these events, and look at the expertise, so focus on the expertise. And ironically, actually, the first person who drew my attention to the lack of gender diversity in the energy industry was my boyfriend back then, because he was a bit jealous, Lebanese. And then he was frustrated by the fact that I had only male colleagues. It didn't cross my mind then, but then later I realized that why this was the case. And also in my work, wherever I went, there were strong dominance of men. Things have changed, but for me, it's still quite shocking to talk about an industry which is more than a century old, global industry. And yet, and maybe that industry may have passed its heydays, we don't know, with this focus on climate change, aggressive climate change agenda and policies. And yet we are still sitting down and addressing why this is the issue and how can we change it. It's never too late. And I believe that the pandemic is allowing the industry to go into a reinvention, not a retreat, but I'm hoping we'll be able to tackle all these issues later on during this webinar. Let me now move on to our distinguished panelists, and I'll start with the panelists as they are shown on my screen. I'll start with you, Patricia, to tell us about yourself, and then we'll move on to the other panelists as well.
Thank you very much, Carol. Just introducing myself. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this panel. I appreciate being here today and speaking on women's advancement in the oil and gas sector. So my name is Patricia Simon Hart. I'm the managing director of AFTRAC Limited, which is an ISO certified oil and gas service company, and we've been in the industry for the past 24 years. But my background is actually, I have a first degree in mathematics and computer science. So I started out in the IT sector, which evolved into the ICT sector. And then I also got involved in sales and marketing and business development and management in that sector, and ended up actually offering products and services and solutions really to the upstream and downstream oil and gas sectors from the ICT perspective. And then from there, I went out to set up my own company, and we started out in the downstream sector, but then we moved to the upstream sector looking for solutions for oil and gas companies. So we started out with partnering with some international firms and offering various services, well services, or production-related services in the oil and gas industry, so sand management. And then we went into process diagnostic testing, into well studies in collaboration. And then eventually I expanded into surface well testing, where we invested in a lot of infrastructure and equipment and personnel, and set up a surface well testing company. So that's what we are today. I also have a background in public service. I worked in government for about 6 years. I was invited in to run the water ministry for 6 years. So I have not just ICT background, I have water sector background as well. I was commissioner for water for 6 years, and then I went on to do a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and Harvard University, and then came back to the oil sector, and I've been running my business since then. So that is basically my background. How I'm linked to this, I think in 2000 we saw a need to have an organization where women could network, where we could advocate for more women in the industry. And so myself, Ibilola, who's also one of the panelists, and another lady, Mrs. Fumi Ogbe, we set up and founded Women in Energy Network, which is growing really fast in Nigeria. And it's an advocacy group, it's a networking group, it's a capacity building group where we raise women in the sector. So that's how I'm linked to the topic, I would guess. I'm also involved in the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria. I was the first female member there. And also I am the secretary to that organization. So very involved in advocacy for local content and local participation. And then I'm also on the NCCF board of the Nigerian Local Content Development Authority, and for women, or for the diversity sectoral group, where we look at diversity issues and push for more women in the sector. So that's a bit about me. I hope we have interesting discussions and conversations here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. Let me move on to Eugenia.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here in this lovely panel sharing experience with these amazing women. So my name is Eugenia Langa. I'm from Mozambique, based in Maputo, the capital city. So I did my studies in civil engineer here, and I did a specialization in international professional procurement. I'm currently the CEO of Nueva, a company that provides procurement and logistics service in the sector of construction, oil and gas, mining, and energy. I have 12 years of experience working in these sectors that are male dominated. And until today, I face many challenges with different kind of related to gender in these sectors. As a woman, I'm also committed to actions that aim to empower other women. I am the member of Lioness of Africa, which is a social enterprise working advanced African women platforms that aims to promote women in business all over the world. I'm also a member of the Sherry Blair Foundation, which is a platform that aims to help release the potential of women entrepreneurs so they can refine and redefine their future. And I'm also the vice president of a local association called Impact Women Who Lead, that also aims to provide a safe and without discrimination environment to all women that own their business and create a network in order for women to help each other to grow. Because one of the challenges that we face here in Mozambique is that we women are not that close to each other when it's related to business. It is easier to a woman to go and ask for a partnership with a male company instead of actually talking to each other and understand, oh, we have something in common, we can help each other. So the Impact Association aims to bring women together and release each other's potential to work and to grow together in our country. And in 2009, I received the Outstanding Award in the oil and gas sector in Mozambique due to my commitment in investment in compliance, quality, and especially in the market, trying to create a better market and women opportunities to women here in my country, in Mozambique. Thank you. I think we will explore this and more other areas of this discussion through this panel today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Berta. You need to unmute. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for being invited to be part of this panel with amazing women. We've been sharing our experience over the week, and it is truly amazing the work that my colleagues have been done over the year. So I can see that we need to improve the visibility of what women do in the oil sector. So I would like to take the opportunity to thank IACIPA and the Ministry of Oil to promoting this series and give this visibility to what we have in the oil sector. So my name is Berta Issa. I'm a businesswoman born in Angola. I have completed my studies in the United States. I hold a degree in finance and master's in international business. My first experience started in the banking sector, where shortly right after I joined the downstream division of Sonangol, which is our Angola state-owned oil company, as a financial analyst, where right after also I advanced to senior management. My story is not the same of most of my peers in the industry, but at the time, I was fortunate enough to have a director that was a feminist and a CEO that was a woman. So, and they were promoting talents at the company. So my promotion in the early years of my career was quite according to the time span of most of the men in the industry. Then, because I'm known as a strategic thinker by my peers in the oil and gas business, in 2016, I joined as a board advisor of the newly formed board of administration of Sonangol Group in order to work in one of the most challenging company restructuring project involving over 8,000 workers and a $32 billion portfolio. It was really quite challenging. At that time, once again, I was blessed to work with a very diverse board of administration. We had the CEO as a president, an administrator at the time, Eunice de Carvalho, as a vice president. She was the first woman to be president at Chevron in Brazil. And so we were quite fortunate to have with us at the board administration, Eunice de Carvalho. After 14 years at the state-owned company in 2018, I felt as a natural progression for my professional path to open a consulting and development company, Inga Rose, where I'm the managing director. Our company is focused on projects with economic and social impact. I truly believe that the entrepreneurship is central to Africa's future prosperity. It is critical to accelerate the success of business ideas, of homegrown business leaders, and drive growth in a sustainable and inclusive manner. And I'm always involved, not only as a person, but as a man, through our company, and in projects that promote economic and social inclusion. So today, Inga Rose is part of the commitment that we have with the continent in general and Angola in particular, in partnership with the Ministry of Family, Social Matters and Empowerment of Women. Inga Rose has conducted the first ever and largest study in diversity, in the workplace. This study, which findings are currently being debated nationwide, is shedding a new light on the reality of economic inequalities and gender parity in organization as an obstacle to economic development. In addition, I serve as the vice president of a local contact focus association for Angolan companies in the oil sector. So every day for me, it's about economic and inclusion and social inclusion. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Berta. Let me move now to invite Dr. Ibilola.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much to the organizers and my co-panelists. My name is Ibilola Amao. I'm the principal consultant at Lonadec Global Services. We're an engineering technology and information management company. We're 30 years this year, in a few weeks, next week. At Lonadec, we align people, technology, engineering solutions and services to improve society. We domicile, domesticate, and democratize technology. And we're committed to transforming lives, communities, and STEM-focused innovative solutions. We're ISO certified and ISO 9001:2015 certified in 2010. My first degree was in civil and structural engineering, and my doctorate in computer-aided design and drafting. And then I pivoted into 3D modeling in the area of oil and gas facilities. And post-COVID, Lonadec has pivoted into providing digital transformation, information management, and cloud solutions to deliver digital twin assets so people could work from home and work from anywhere. Concerning this particular topics we're looking at today, my passion is in human capital development. We've trained over 100,000 STEM talent. We're currently upskilling over 10,000 talent with Microsoft, LinkedIn, and GitHub, as well as empowering 30 cloud practitioners with Amazon Web Services. I sat on the board of the Energy Institute in London for 2 terms, 6 years. I'm currently on the board of the Energy Institute IP Week and on the panel of judges with the Royal Academy of Engineering Africa Prize. I'm a proud member of the Oil and Gas Trainers Association, the Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, a co-founder with Fumi Ogwe and Patricia Simon Hart with Women in Energy Network. Very passionate about women in engineering, energy, and entrepreneurship. I collaborate a lot, Lonadec collaborates a lot with partners to cover women-related issues, and most specifically, getting more girls in STEM into the pipeline for women in engineering, women in energy, and entrepreneurship. I'm pleased to be here, and I look forward to engaging with the other panelists as well as the participants. Thank you so much for the privilege.
Thank you. And let me move on to Camilla. Camilla, you need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Carol, and good afternoon, everyone. It is such a pleasure and an honor to take part of this panel amongst these wonderful ladies. So my name is Kanya Lopez. I'm Angolan, graduated in civil engineering from the University of Salford in Manchester. I'm also an incorporated member of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers in the UK. I worked for about a year in the construction industry right after I graduated until I discovered the oil and gas sector. So I actually been working now in this industry for 10 years. I started over here in Angola with Technip FMC as the first female engineer in the company in Angola. I joined the company as a level 1 engineer and started immediately learning about the company products and the operations. So after that, I had the opportunity to move to the US, where I was an installation engineer, working offshore, delivering subsea production systems for the industry in the Gulf of Mexico. That job to date was for me the most enjoyable time of my career, because that was when I discovered my real passion for the oil and gas industry. I had no idea what it takes to obtain hydrocarbons from subsea. So offshore is where everything materializes and when you can actually accomplish success in a project. I did that for 2.5 years until I returned back to Angola to pursue a career in operations management.
Oh, did we lose Kamia?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We cannot see you, but it's okay. You can continue and until we. Oh, now we can see you as well. Perfect.
Sorry, it's my internet connection is not very good today. So how much did you hear, Carol?
No, just until maybe fractions of a second before now. So we heard quite almost everything you said.
All right. So like I was saying, I did that. I worked offshore for about 2.5 years until I returned back to Angola. And I went from offshore operations to starting to pursue a career in operations management. It wasn't something I wanted to do initially, but the opportunity was there and I took it. So I went from managing a small team of a coordinator, engineer, and a small group of offshore technicians to overseeing today a bigger group of managers that manage the execution of projects offshore. So my main responsibilities today are to manage and coach teams comprised of more than 100 men to deliver optimal preparation and execution of subsea production systems safely while ensuring operational and financial efficiency. Another passion of mine is mentoring of young professionals. I was once a young professional and I struggled to fit in this industry. So I always dedicate my heart and my time to young professionals because it's important that we guide and motivate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamia. I mean, that's really nice when you mentioned the Gulf of Mexico, because we are in the hurricane season hitting the Gulf of Mexico. I really appreciate how challenging working offshore is, but you put a nice way of describing how it was an eye-opener for you. So as you can see, we have a very, very passionate group of speakers with a wide range of expertise and focus, complementary expertise. And it happens that we are sitting in different parts of the world, but it's amazing when you just look at the industry from distance. You don't have this kind of impression. You have the impression that we are in a male-dominated industry, which may be true when you look at certain numbers, but actually when you start digging into the industry, you see there's a lots of really impressive talent, and our panel today is just a testament of that. What I would like to do now is just share with you a little bit, give you an idea of the outline, how I would like to proceed with the discussion today. First of all, we have one of our panelists, Patricia, to share with us a presentation, and there are lots of thought-provoking findings in that presentation, and we engage in a discussion where all the speakers express their views on different issues. I have also prepared some poll questions, 3 in total, and I am warning my panelists that they did not see those poll questions because I would like to see the reaction. They can be quite controversial, but it would be interesting to highlight how people perceive certain topics, and you will see that I'm pretty sure we're going to have a divergence in views. But I will not dedicate the last minutes of the webinar to the Q&A. Please feel free to send your questions all along. So if you hear something interesting, if you want to get some clarification on any topic, just type your question either in the chat box or in the Q&A box actually. And when I find the right moment, I will ask that question. So we'll keep it more conversational so that everybody benefits and enjoys this webinar. So don't wait till the end, but of course you can ask your question anytime. So I'll encourage you all along to send your questions. Now let me go back to Patricia. Patricia, I keep on calling you Patricia because of my French education, but please, you have a very interesting presentation. When I looked at the draft you shared, I found every single slide something that made me think about a question that I would like to follow on to. So please go ahead, and then we engage in the discussion with the rest of the panelists. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carol. And good afternoon again, everybody. So today I'm going to be speaking on the solutions towards a gender diverse and inclusive oil and gas industry, but I'm going to speak from the perspective of women in business. And I know a lot of the, even though a lot of the issues that will come up here will actually also relate to other areas, but I'm going to be speaking specifically on women in business. So just looking at the data globally, you can see the trend in the number of women or the percentage of women actually working in the oil and gas sector. I mean, the average, they say it's about 22% of the workforce globally is made up of women. But as they go up the level, as they go higher up in their careers, we find out that women drop off for various reasons. And from entry level at 27%, we'll see C-suite and board level drop right down to 1%. And these figures are figures really that are gotten from like the oil and gas sector in America and Europe. And what we're finding is that there is a drop in the number of women as we go up. So these figures show that for women in oil and gas, the trend is as you go higher up the ladder, we find fewer women in the oil sector. For women in oil and gas, I'm going to be speaking, as I said, on women in business. Now, usually we just put the women in different buckets. We have the women in leadership, we have women in the workforce, women in business, and women in STEM. So I'm just going to be focusing today on women in business. And my presentation will just cover what the data tells us, barriers to entry, solutions, and some takeaways that we can have for this afternoon to see how we can advance the numbers within the sector. So what does the data really tell us? And, you know, when I was trying to prepare for this, I was a bit shocked at the lack of data, especially for sub-Saharan Africa, for Nigeria, for Angola, for the countries that are actually involved in oil and gas in Africa. But globally, for women in business in general, we say 1 in 3 women own women-owned businesses. 1 in 3 businesses are owned by women. And these are World Bank statistics and data. And they say more women are now registering to be business owners. That's more than 51% of the enterprise. However, they're saying that men are more likely to save or to borrow to start and operate, expand businesses than women. So women don't tend to want to borrow to start the business, or women don't want to save or are not saving to actually start businesses in general. And this is business in general. It was also very, very difficult to locate globally data on women-owned businesses in the oil and gas sector. Now that data, I couldn't come across it, so I don't know if there is very much data when it comes to that. Concerning sub-Saharan Africa, there is data on the extractive industry, and they say the extractive industry itself, in both men and women, account for 1% of the continent's labor force, which is really, really low considering the number of countries that actually are oil producers, and majority of their economy is based, it's oil-based, so over 90% of the economy. In Nigeria, women make up only 18% of the workforce, and that's according to NATI, and that was 2018 statistics. But in general, I mean, women are entrepreneurs. I mean, so 58% of women are self-employed, but this really has to do with the informal sector. So more of the informal sector are entrepreneurs, or very small businesses are women-owned businesses. So there is potential because we see women are entrepreneurs in Nigeria. Nigeria seems to lead the way in Africa in terms of percentage of new female-owned businesses. So there is hope going there. More women are stepping out and taking up more formal business creation and owning firms on their own. Again, there's no data on women-owned businesses in oil and gas sector, which is pretty disturbing. I think that is one of the major issues we have in this sector. We just can't find data on women in oil and gas. So what are the barriers and enablers? So as we saw, women make up a lot of the entrepreneurs in the oil and gas sector. However, we continue, women in business, I mean, but in the oil and gas sector, we continue to lag behind. We as Women in Energy Network, I know we've been trying to get data on women in business, and it's been a challenge to even get to find women, that many women in business, even if they're small and medium-sized businesses, not to talk of the large ones. So it is definitely a challenge, and we need to look into it. And then also only a few women have managed to transcend the barriers of unconscious biases, either themselves or how they perceive us in the industry in general. And not to talk of moving up the value chain or scaling up in terms of the sizes of the companies. And then, as I said, they remain as small and medium-sized businesses, so just remain at the bottom of the pile. So what are the barriers? Now, when I was looking at, I think, and I'd like to just to say it again, is just lack of data. This is a challenge because it is a challenge because if we do not have data, how can we measure? And if we don't have the baseline, how do we track improvement? So the lack of data is actually critical and key. If the EMP companies or the service companies or government agencies really want to increase the participation of women in the sector, the first thing we need to do is to establish that baseline. Of data of women in business, data of women in the sector as well. And then also based on that, we can now set targets. Based on that, we can begin to track the performance and see how we're measuring up to these targets. So lack of data is one thing that has to be addressed. So that we know where we are and where we're going to. Another thing is the mindset, of course. Unconscious bias, as you heard just earlier, and that's within and without. So even the women themselves, they also have this bias toward the sector, thinking, okay, this is a male-dominated sector, there's no way I can participate. They won't even consider the sector at all if you're an entrepreneur or a woman that is interested, or you're an engineer. They wouldn't actually consider being a business person. So they have those biases also that come from cultural biases, come from family biases, or the biases that, you know, for women that are married and need to start up their own businesses. So we have those kind of biases. But apart from that, we have the biases from the sector itself in when they're selecting vendors. Now, selecting vendors is basically a perception issue as well, in terms of the role of sales and marketing in actually the vendor selection. How do they perceive female-owned companies and the capacity and capabilities of these companies? So the unconscious bias exists not just within the workforce or within the organizations, but also in vendor selection and also subcontractors within the industry. So it is a big problem when it comes to business the mindset and the unconscious bias. Then there's the lack of awareness. Most women don't even know they can get into the sector. Most women don't know much about the sector. Most women, most female engineers or women who with a technical background don't have entrepreneurial skills. They don't have the exposure to sales and marketing, don't have the exposure to finance, don't have that exposure. And so they stay where they are. And most of them wouldn't even really accept to go into a business development role, which is different from a technical role. I know for myself how I got into business was in the ICT sector. I was thrown into business development. I resisted a bit at the beginning, but that is what has been the foundation for me setting up my own business, because I was exposed to business development, sales and marketing, and just overall general management. So because of that, I could see, oh, you can sell solutions, you can look for solutions for your clients, and you can actually set up a business. But there's that lack of awareness on that side. On the other side, you have entrepreneurs who have no clue how to even enter the industry. So we need to begin to create that awareness. And I think that's one of the things. Another thing is access to credit or finance. And I think usually this is the solution everybody tries to prefer, that, oh, yes, women need access to funding, they need access to credit, they need access to finance. So a good number of initiatives have come out both by the international development partners as well as local banks and the industry. I mean, in Nigeria, NCDMB, which is the local content Development Commission, they've set up a fund for women. But there's still challenges there, because women still find it difficult to meet the criteria for access, because they don't have landed property. They have, most of them are not even 51% owned by women, because their husbands have majority share in the business that's actually theirs. So there are a lot of challenges that they still face. So yes, access to credit is still a problem because women can't meet the criteria to actually access the credit that is being provided. So it remains. And then apart from that, we have the access to opportunities. So people who have even invested in the sector, we find out they have little or no access to opportunities within the sector. As it's male dominated, it's still a men's club. Men talk to men. Men tell each other about the opportunities that are upcoming, and you need information to prepare to even want to consider going in or expanding or extending your services, or even knowing what is coming or what is out there. So access to opportunities is also a big issue. Then, as I said earlier, even in taking loans or the finance that is available, women are just risk adverse. It's just we're just very cautious in what we do. And so we don't want to take these financial risks. So we'll stay where we are in our little corner, a little SME, and we're fine with that. Not as ambitious as the men would be. And then, we lose out on the opportunities that present themselves because, oh no, I can't take that how many $1 million loan to invest in the facility that needs to be in place to actually get the job. So we are risk adverse. And I think we need to also keep that in mind as one of the challenges and barriers for us to actually progress. Of course, absence of role models, and that cuts across all, whether it's within the workforce or leadership or women in business, just as absence of good role models. And we don't see the women we want to see, especially with the upcoming Generation Z, as we call them. I mean, they have they want to look different. They just want a glamorous kind of job. And of course, oil and gas doesn't look very glamorous, and there are no role models for them to actually see like a future for themselves there. So they're not even looking in that direction at all. So we need more role models really in the sector. Then of course, there's exclusion from networks. And I won't go on and on about that, but I think it's very clear, which is why the women networks that are up and coming are supposed to address that kind of challenge, where women can share their experiences, women can actually begin to share information, women can actually begin to encourage themselves in the industry, whether it is in business or whether it is in the workforce or in leadership. And we're seeing that's what we're doing with Women in Energy Network, really trying to push ahead to make sure that we have a strong network of women and we get to know each other. And it's amazing how many women there are in the sector that we could learn from each other, and we can actually rub off each other on our competencies. So I'm going to look at a few of the solutions and enablers before I hand it back to you, Carol. So I think the first and foremost is just confronting unconscious bias. So while they're doing it for, as I said, I'm talking about women in business, but while they're doing it for the workforce in general in these corporations, they should also be looking at it when it comes to women in business. How are they addressing that? And it's not being addressed at all. So if we are to try and raise up entrepreneurs, that unconscious bias needs to be removed. When you even talk to the supply chain departments within these organizations, they talk about giving women the softer things like, oh, we give them corporate gifts, or we give them cleaning services. I mean, that's what is in their minds, and not develop women in the real technical services. How do we get the female engineers to become entrepreneurs, to actually take up these positions as well, is really not there. So there's that unconscious bias that women should be only doing certain sort of jobs and keep it there. So that's one thing. Then including gender and local content policies, I think, is critical. They need to be included, because without legislation, we're not going to go anywhere. We need institutional frameworks. We need to actually reduce the kind of competition that we're facing. There have to be mandatory requirements for contractors to employ more women-owned businesses and include them in the supply chain. And then they need to set these targets that should be monitored for women-owned business contractors. And this needs to be included in these local content. If it's not, we're not going to be able to move anything. It'll just be the normal rhetoric of the company saying, yes, having these gender diversity awarenesses, but they're actually, when you look at the numbers, we're not seeing any numbers move. And then creating incentives for subcontracting to women-owned businesses, then promoting some kind of joint ventures and alliances that would include women-owned businesses. Don't exclude women. Look for where are the women, what can we do, how can we engage them, and how can we promote them in general. And then information sharing would focus on creating opportunities for women-owned businesses is very important. We need to see we need to have the information so we know what the opportunities are, so women can actually participate in business. If we don't have information, we can't even be prepared. So then we need to look at the emerging opportunities. And I think this is really important for the next generation with the digital technology and transparent, the Internet of Things. We see Generation Z is more into digital. So if the digital space, we need to start now bringing those women and looking at the younger generation and see how they can fill those roles and close the gap within the oil and gas sector if they get involved in those kind of technologies and those kind of solutions for women in the industry. So keep our focus on these emerging technologies for the next generation and try and pull them in as women-owned businesses there. Of course, just to continue on the diversity enablers, we need to establish that baseline data. So we need to have to know where we are, improve on data collection and reports, and have measurable and actionable plans to improve these metrics, and then also track progress. And then we'll know it's not just all talk, but we have numbers to back it up, and we're seeing real numbers in terms of the number of women-owned businesses that are actually getting contracts, the number of women-owned businesses that are actually even participating in the value chain, and where they are, what area within the value chain are they participating, and not just giving us numbers, but giving us real figures in terms of even volume, in terms of the actual capacity in terms of women. So then also initiate women and women in oil and gas business programs. So really, as I said, because women don't have the technical staff don't have the entrepreneurial skills, that needs to be included, or the R&D people don't have entrepreneurial skills, we can actually it should also be part of the training so that you build up these engineers to be more entrepreneurs. And then the other way around, also women who are entrepreneurs and interested in business can also be sensitized and be trained on the oil and gas value chain and see where they could fit in and the opportunities there. So that's very important. Then, as I said, setting the goals and targets in the oil and gas supply chain, which can be monitored by local content regulators. Then diversity and some more, create formal mentorship programs for women in business. So we're hearing about mentorship programs in women in the workforce, but we're not having the ones for women in business. So where are those mentorship programs for other women to mentor women in business? Not enough. If there are, they're few and far between, and we need to increase that so that we have more success stories from EMP companies owned by women, which is maybe just a handful, to women in the oil and gas service sector, and then also the other services that could also support the sector. then just awareness training in general to the supply chain and to people involved in contracts departments so that we address this unconscious bias towards women in business. And then we need to begin to map the opportunities with available competence in the industry in terms of women-owned businesses. And that is, if we don't have the data, of course, we can't even do this. So back to data again. So let me just round up with a few takeaways. I think I've gone on for too long. I think government has a role and responsibility, and they need to take up that role seriously and include and legislate for more women participation in business. And not just business, obviously, even in the workforce. And those numbers need to be tracked, and we need to know that we're making progress. The women themselves need to step up and equip themselves either way, as I said, either as entrepreneurs, for the technical people, and then for the entrepreneurs, get to know more about the oil and gas sector, because if it is the mainstay of your economy, you should know what's going on there and what's happening, what's emerging, what are the new trends, even as we move into a net zero situation. I mean, what's coming, what's opening up. So women also need to step up. Then data remains king, and setting actionable and measurable targets. So data, and more data. It needs to be taken seriously, and we need agencies or NGOs or whoever is supposed to be collecting this data to collect the data so that we know what's going on and we're able to track it. And then corporations themselves needs to focus on inclusion and just move past the rhetoric. So we need to see some actionable plans from corporations, which we're not seeing. So a lot of them have signed up to the Global Compact for the SDGs and all those things. But in terms of the actual implementation of these commitments, we need to see it. And then awareness to address unconscious bias, and that is critical. So have that awareness so that we can address unconscious bias either within or externally. So I think I'll end there. And I'd just like to thank you again for being so patient and listening to my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patricia. You gave us lots of food for thought, and then you actually set up the scene quite nicely. I'd like to comment on a few things, but actually let me focus on one thing and then throw the other aspects to our panelists in terms of question. When you mentioned the cultural biases, I come from the Middle East, which sits on the largest oil and gas proven reserves in the world. And this is where you have the biggest producers in the world and the largest national oil companies. I did some interviews earlier this year for Marie Claire magazine about the women that work in the region in the energy industry. And all of them, without any exception, said how much support they got from their parents, from their families and friends to enter the industry. So it gives you the impression that there is a lot of cultural support there. But when you look at the region from this, is actually not only the region, if you look at OPEC, for example, of which both Angola and Nigeria are members, how many female ministers you find? None. And when you look at the heads of the national oil companies like the Aramco, ADNOC, Kuwait Petroleum Company, you don't find women heading. So I wonder whether there is, how do we break this kind of link between, okay, the cultural side where you do have the right support, but then that, yes, it's okay for you to enter, but not to lead. And this is really, I think, is a big handicap. The second point that Patricia highlighted, that is of data. That is very important because I asked Patricia if she had some numbers on specific countries, on specific aspects of the industry. And we both agreed that that data is not there. And that is pretty surprising because if you look at the calls today of international organizations and some specific groups such as Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, the OECD is supporting that as well. You see, there is a great call for improving transparency in the extractive industry in general and oil and gas in particular. Yet we seem to be overlooking an important aspect of data transparency that is looking at more gender-related data in terms of employment in the industry. Because actually when you look at, and I was thinking, when I listened to Patricia, I was thinking, most of the knowledge that we have about women's role in the industry is based on our own experiences. So what other colleagues, female colleagues have experienced, but we do definitely need some hardcore data in order to contribute more comprehensively and more effectively to this debate, because you really cannot really manage what you cannot see. But on that particular point, I would like to ask Berta, because you mentioned that you collaborated with the government on a study. So I'd be very interested in getting some figures from you, some hardcore data, just to shock us if that data is really shocking. But I would also want you to elaborate on one more aspect, because I find that quite controversial in what Patricia said, that is women being risk averse. Given your experience, do you really see that, that women are risk averse, especially in the oil and gas industry? If you don't mind, please, to share with us, first of all, the finding of the study, and then address the issue of risk adversity.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carol. Patrice, congratulations on your presentation. Amazing presentation. Yes, the commitment to gender diversity has risen in the country, in our country, and especially we see it from Angola signing the agenda of 2030 of Sustainable Development Goals. And among those goals, we have gender equality, erasing poverty, and so on. So this, in 2019, I sat with the Ministry of Social Affairs, and they say we need to measure. And I love numbers. I said that I come from a financial background, and I thought that was the perfect job. Yes, we have a huge problem when it comes to data. We thought that we're going to be able to present numbers in 6 months. It took us 18 months. And the problem comes of getting data is not only because the propensity of organizations giving information. No, it's the everything from infrastructure, from technology that most of the companies don't have. Having access to the companies, sometimes we don't have an updated yellow page. I don't know if I'm from the generation that had yellow pages. We don't have a database where we have the information from the companies in the country. I don't know if it is the rest of Africa, but in the country. So now the ministries are working on that and having updated information on the address, phones, and websites of the company. Things simple like that makes it very difficult to gather information. And then when we get to talk to the companies, reach the companies, some companies, they don't feel comfortable giving information. But fortunate enough, for instance, for the oil sector, we had to involve the Ministry of Oil and Gas sector to talk to the companies and give information. We had to involve also other ministries for the banking sector. But basically, yes, we were able to get data from 123 organizations, government organizations. And when we talk about government, we're talking about courts, ministries. We have public institutions, private, not only public institutions, but also we have public and private enterprise. In terms of participating in the study, the private, we only had from the private enterprises, it was a bit low, their participation, but nevertheless, we have a database of 47,000 people. We have a very good database from the oil and companies, and all of the companies that share their pipeline data with us, yes. And when we got to look into the numbers, and I liked what Carol just mentioned, that what we have is based on our knowledge, in our experience, but we don't have our hardcore data. And then what we gather from this information, that the men that represent 48% of Angola population, they make up 64% of the workplace. 71% of management positions and 87% of C-level positions. So that means that in the global workforce, women, they only represent 13%. When we look into the oil sector, women, they go from 36 global workforce to 25% of participation in the oil sector. And the most interesting data that I got from these studies is the degrees of the women. So in these studies, we could see that 3 out of 10 women have a higher degree. When we compare to the men, it's only 1 out of 10 men. If we look into the oil sector, because the oil sector is so complex, 7 out of 10 women have a higher degree, only when 4 out of 10 men. And we could see when we analyze the numbers that women are being promoted at a higher rate at senior levels. Still, it's low. So we have the corporate pipeline. We have women that make 25% of the oil and gas workforce. When it comes to the first level management, we go to 23%. But then when it is to the senior level, we go up in percentage to 31%. And then we go down 13% to board administration, and we don't have not even one woman as a president in the oil sector. We don't have at this present moment. So we have higher qualifications. It is demanding from us higher qualification. But like Patricia said, it's about opportunities, it's about mindset. It was mentioned here, culture, and we had roundtables. Before we present the studies, the findings, we had several roundtables with human resource managers, with also people that work in the legislation and people that monitor the laws, because Angola has one of the most inclusive laws in the continent, because we were looking, we have all the laws here, but what is going on? And so we understood it was the main obstacle, it was culture. It is about mindset. And just also to answer Patricia mentioned that women need to step up. Yes, but in order for us to step up, we need to support system from family and society. That is the huge problem that we have, and we could find the answers that we got from the round table is that our work day hours, it's longer than the men. We work 8 hours and then we have 4 hours extra at home. We have family responsibilities and also domestic responsibilities. So sometimes it's very hard when they invite you for a promotion, for a position. You need to consider all this, and I know that we're going to be able to debate all this, but yes, we need a support system, not only family, but society. And when I talk about society, we're talking about the nurseries, schools, and also at work. Being risk averse, just to answer and conclude, to give space to my other colleagues, I think that being risk averse, it's not only related to a gender, but to to people in general. And that being risk averse has to do also the context that you are, that where you live, the society. For instance, Patricia mentioned very well, now I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have the same financial opportunities that men have. You know, when I go to a bank and ask for a loan, they ask who else is in my company, who are my partners. But just my background itself should be enough for me to get a loan. But no, so because I don't have access to finance, I need to make a cautious decision in my business. So, but I will leave the space for my other colleagues to interact.
Thank you, Berta. I would like Mohammed to put the first question of the poll because I mean, we heard some fascinating stories, especially when Camilla said that she discovered the oil and gas industry. And I got the inspiration for the first question that if you have a daughter or a child, you know, they come to you for career advice, would you recommend them a career in oil and gas? And actually, that was a question that I asked my husband yesterday. We have a toddler and we are both, you know, we have both established a career in the oil and gas industry. And I'll tell you his answer later. But if we take 30 seconds for you to think about the answer and show us the answer, that would be great. And then we can discuss later. But first, I would like to, before commenting on this question, I would like to ask Eugenia if it's possible, because I did my due diligence on these fascinating ladies. And in one article, her business is described as a procurement game changer. However, we talked also earlier about the unconscious bias towards, you know, towards women in this industry. I know procurement is not something that comes to your mind often with a woman leading and achieving also awards and recognition. So maybe you can give us a little bit a better understanding of this unconscious bias that you yourself may have faced, or maybe you did not face at all, which would be great.
This is my everyday challenge. I have so many experience to share. One of the most recent was independent consultancy that I was invited to do in a big company here. And when they called me to a presential interview, one of the things that the person that was there interviewing me asked that if I could handle the pressure. Because it was a 24/7 job. I had to be available on the weekends in some cases. I have to be available to travel to do a field inspection and etc. In the end of the interview, I felt so, I can say, violated in some aspect because I was a woman. Through all the interview, it was mentioned all the negative aspects that I had because I was a woman. And in the end of the day, I realized that company was not ready to have a woman leading that process. So it was that kind of one experience that I had, that I say I will pass this opportunity because you guys are not ready to have me. I know how good I am in what I do, and I will definitely do this work. But the company already comes and presents the gender as a challenge to this work. So this is one of the experiences that I had, and it's a daily challenge. Even what Berta mentioned about getting allowance in the bank, a loan in the bank. It's very difficult. They ask who are the partners. They ask about 10 times more about your background and the companies that you already provide services. So, and when you compare that due diligence from the male companies, they say, okay, I just had to submit the forms, and in 1 month I had the loan. I was like, why? What is behind this? What is women not showing in terms of security of the business? What else do we need to do? Because on my daily experience, I feel like we need to go as twice as much to prove that we are capable to provide services in procurement, in any kind of area. If you are sick, they say, okay, because it's a woman, you get sick. But if it was a man getting sick, the conversation will be different. So it's a daily challenge, and you need to adapt, not to show any type of vulnerability, and not to show that you need a special type of attention or a special type of treatment. I don't want to be treated especially because I'm a woman. I want to be treated equally, because I believe that I have the same experience as I'm a man, and we can both work and provide the same type of quality of services. So in the procurement area that I embrace, it was not easy, and it's still not easy. And some points I still get email exchange with big companies, and they ask when they can meet the CEO of the company, because it cannot be a woman. So it's something that I face daily, and I have to work through my work and through the quality of the service that I provide, that I cannot be compared for being a female, but just for being a professional in the sector. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I please have the first polls question results? Wow, that is pretty impressive. 85% yes, you would recommend your daughter or child in the future to get a career in oil and gas, and only 85% versus 15%. And I tell you, my husband fits in the 15% not because of any gender bias, actually, but because of something else happening, climate change policies. And he thought that the industry, by the time our daughter would want to build a career, would be not exciting, and it would be better for her to become a footballer, which should be much more interesting. But let me ask Dr. Ibilola to first of all comment on what you saw. That is pretty encouraging, because you are engaged in capacity building, training, a wide range of engineers from everywhere around the world. Were you able to see, for example, a notable trend in terms of diversity? Because, and I tell you where I'm coming from, because I also teach at universities, and for many, many years, we had a great participation of students, both men and women alike. But over the recent years, the numbers have shrunk, whereas the numbers of students going into environmental economics, for example, or renewable energy have increased substantially. Do you see that happening in your day-to-day work?
Thank you, Carol, and thanks for all the presentations. And I really enjoyed Patricia's presentation. First and foremost, I'd like to tell you that none of my children are heading in the direction of oil and gas. The first is a psychologist, the second is a finance person, and my baby, who is going into final year in oil and gas or chemical engineering, is deliberately not heading towards the oil and gas industry because she wants to be in either food tech or music. So I would say children need to be encouraged to follow their passion. And in terms of energy transition, I mean, the oil and gas industry doesn't look very attractive to Generation Z. Simply because it's considered to be one of the dirtier sources of energy. And when they look at sustainability and the cleaner environment, they're just averse to oil and gas. They would probably prefer to go into renewable energy, geothermal, wind, and non-conventional sources of energy. The exciting part about the energy sector and the energy mix, though, is that digital transformation gives a lot of space for the female STEM talent. And my first degree was in civil and structural engineering, and then my doctorate was in computer-aided design and drafting. And my career has kind of moved more towards the digital transformation side of things. So in terms of engineering technology and information management, we've moved post-COVID into having more digital assets, digital twins, people working from home, working from anywhere, virtual work, remote work. And these are areas where I think it gives more leeway to the female cycles. And I would normally say that there are different cycles in the career and the life of a female STEM talent. So you start off as a girl in STEM, maybe you love maths and physics, chemistry and information technology, and then you find yourself in the physics class where there's so few females, and then you go to university and there are less females in the class, and then at some point at the first job entry side of things. It's a bit of a struggle where most times you're discriminated against because of your gender. And most companies tend to think of return on investment in the earlier career life cycle of the females. And I've come to realize that most of our male superiors and supervisors tend to stress test us. So they kind of try to frustrate us, to push us out, simply to determine whether we have what it takes to stick staying in the kitchen or in the hot tub. So basically, they're trying to see whether they can frustrate you out of the industry and whether it's worth their while investing in you. So the stress test from the male counterparts and the male supervisors and superiors, for me, is an opportunity for you to prove that you're focused, you're hardworking, you're just as good as your male counterparts. You can see the long range, you can see the long haul, you're determined to make a success of your career. And once you pass the stress test, there's a unique turnaround where you begin to see them more as he for she, male allies, and they begin to root for you and they begin to support you and sponsor you. So I always encourage young female engineers, the first 2-3 years, focus on becoming chartered, focus on gaining skills, competences, focus on going the extra mile and proving to your male counterparts, your superiors, that you're a stickler for excellence and you're not going anywhere if you really want to stick it through. And then for me, I'd say, then as you begin to go into the intermediate and senior roles, you can begin to see there quite a range of opportunities for females that doesn't even impact on your work-life balance. Project management, remote support services, has up, and then the digital side of things opens a new ball game for women to play. So I would say that there are huge opportunities, especially in the digital transformation era for females. Your gender is not an impediment in any way, especially in this digital transformation phase and in the energy transition phase. But I would also say you need to get engaged in networks, support systems, and have your male he for she supporters and allies, because most times you're going to need a male colleague or a male superior to either open the door for you or to sponsor you into a room where there are no women. So we really, really need to be very collaborative and we need to aim for excellence. We continuously need to be in the learning and development phase. We must go through continuous professional development to become chartered and to prove our competence and capability so that we can win much later in our careers. Thank you.
That is absolutely brilliant. If I can ask Mohammed to put the next poll's question, and I would like to just say one more comment about digitalization, because actually digitalization will be or is already a game changer on many fronts. But one important aspect is that it democratizes the decision-making process. So while we're talking about people entering now, for example, the industry, and typically they would need maybe 10-15 years to be able to be involved in some top decision-making process. With digitalization, that kind of time frame has shrunk significantly. But of course, it depends on the leadership in the organization and their appetite to and their ability to be open. This is kind of this transformation. So if you're a smart, fresh graduate, and you have this important tool that is digitalization, and that would allow you to leapfrog many years of experience and allows you to be involved in a complex decision making. But that will not happen everywhere. Leadership and the organizational culture remains an important factor to consider in terms of allowing digitalization to flourish in a way that benefits I would say men and women, not just women alone, but particularly women, because we're starting from a low base entering the industry. So you can see now the second poll question, but I would like Mohammed if you can show us the results straight up. So do you think, and that is just to add another dimension, because we're talking about the future of an industry which is perceived by many as dying. And, people like, lots of young people presented by or led by Greta Thunberg, who I think is doing a very good job, believe that this is whatever oil you have to keep it in the ground. And when it comes to Africa, Africa has a lot of unexploited potential. And getting all those oil and gas resources out of the ground will definitely come with a certain price tag when it comes to the impact on climate. So my question was, do you think Africa should keep its resources in the ground to save the planet, or should they be exploited? And interestingly, the majority says they should be kept in the ground, but that also translates into questioning the future of the industry. And here I would like to invite Kamia, because you started your career as a civil engineer. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the construction. Then you discovered the oil and gas industry. And I could tell from the way you presented, you introduced yourself, how passionate you are about all the things that the average person in the street is not aware of. I mean, I remember when I entered the industry, my parents, even until today, my parents don't really even know what I'm doing in the energy industry and the oil and gas industry in particular. So what would you say? And I don't know how you answered the poll's question, but I would like to hear your view on what you saw now, that no, if you have oil and gas resources, keep them in the ground and save the planet, which also tells people, young people, that there isn't much future for you in this industry. Because when you talk about career, we're talking about the next 30, 40 years, right? So I would like to hear from you, your experience in this industry, and how do you see that?
I think that the oil and gas sector will have to evolve. It's inevitable, not just for environmental reasons, but also because we see the same thing happening in other industries. There's a strong push for digital and enhanced technology across the board. I already see companies in oil and gas giving baby steps into the future of offshore energy, replacing conventional carbon dioxide producing energy processes with carbon-free solutions involving wind turbines, for example. So this is the way to go for the future. And new generations don't have great interest in pursuing a career in oil and gas industry because they see it as an industry that is invaluable. And even though in countries like Angola, they know that the industry is crucial for the country's economy and development, and they know we can't afford to live without it. These new generations lean more towards industries that they believe will most impacted by new technologies. So it's crucial that this industry evolves. And I think we are giving steps in the right direction for this to happen. The world's demand for energy and higher value products continues to increase at an unprecedented rate. And in order to meet that demand, our industry must stay ahead of the curve and ensure we continue to attract, retain, and develop our young people.
Now I need to unmute myself, I forgot. So your message makes perfect sense to the industry, but I have a question for you from Walter, who is asking you about what advice would you give to the young generations, particularly Angolan generation?
Well, thanks for the question first. So the oil and gas industry, it's an innovative, exciting, and changing industry. If you're a young lady or a young man who is passionate about engineering and mathematics, like to travel and get bored doing the same thing, then there's no better place to work. The industry is currently very male dominated, but it's a dynamic, challenging, and fun place to work. If I was to look at myself as an undergrad 12 years ago and see that I'm now speaking at a women's conference in oil and gas, I would be floored. So I would just say that education is so key, and just continue to pursue that. And it doesn't mean traditional education like staying in school forever. but being open and curious about how to continue to build your skills as an employee, regardless of what company you work for, because it will continue to open doors for you. I was lucky to work for a company that invested in myself, in my future, but I was also very hungry to learn and to be better than the men in the group I was in. So I was constantly hungry to learn and to build new skill sets that quickly I managed to get where I am today. So it doesn't matter what your education is or your original degree was in. Stay hungry, look up to those leaders, identify a role model who's interested and hoping that you grow and continue to believe in yourself. A lot of people will believe in you if you believe in yourself. I don't know if there's a good or better way to go about things, but I think the best strategy is to help next generations learn by themselves so that they can keep learning to adapt to new environments. And my experience was just to define my passion. So define your passion, because that's the most important ingredient for success. Don't let your inner evils let you think you can't do it. Hold on to a mentor or your role model and just do it naturally. You will stumble and fall, but you will get up again. And it's just like riding a bicycle.
Yeah, I love this comparison about riding a bicycle. You make it sound so smooth, which it is in reality, but you also refer to something important, that is education. And here I have to actually reprimand a little bit the industry itself, because one thing that the industry, and I'm not talking about a specific country, but globally in general, one mistake I would say the industry has committed is cutting funding to educational institutions, academic institutions, and research centers, because by cutting funding, you're also reducing the pool of talent from which you can get your skilled people for the future. Because if you look at the industry, its main challenges, so if you look at various surveys, including one that we did at Crystal Energy, you do have shortage of talent and skills highlighted over and over again as a key challenge the industry is going to face in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think the industry has to step up its effort and to attract more talent. So there is no point in saying, yeah, there will be oil and gas in demand for a while. The industry needs to double, if not triple, its effort to think of any way to attract those young men and women into the industry. I have lots of questions coming in, but let me turn to Patricia. And then there is a question for you from Faith Iroham. The question is, what advice would you give we, the young professionals, women, to encourage us to stay in business and change the narrative as an oil and gas service contractor?
Okay, thank you for that question, Iroma. Thank you very much. I think we need to keep in mind that in the foreseeable future, gas is still going to remain a transition fuel. And so because of that, I believe entrepreneurs or people in business or women in business could focus on the gas value chain. I mean, there's a lot going on in that space, and begin to refocus in that area. So that's one area the young upcoming business women can look at, the gas value chain, how to get involved in the gas value chain. So build up your awareness and your skills in that area. Another area would be to, of course, look at the renewables, but already there are a good number of women in the renewable energy space, and that continues to grow, so that's a good thing. But you should also remember, even if you are in the oil sector itself, that skills are transferable and your competencies are transferable to other sectors as well. So as the industry transitions, you'll find yourself, there will be a gradual transition into services that will extend to other areas. And of course, as Ibilola had said earlier, the digital solutions for oil and gas, that's a big space opening up, and also a low-hanging fruit for women, and they can go in it's not so physical, you don't use physical strength for that. It's more digital technologies that you could look into for oil and gas solutions. And then just as women in general, I think we need to build on our social capital and make sure that we're in the right networks and try and get into networks, whether they're female networks or even male networks. I mean, I'm in Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, and so is Ibilola, and all those are part of the networks we try to build to make sure that we can advance our businesses. So that's what I'd like to say to you. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Patricia. I'd like to get the last question from the poll, because this builds on what we've been talking about, digitalization. But is digitalization really a threat or actually an opportunity for employment across the board in the oil and gas industry? So Mohammed, can we please have the last poll question? So is digitalization a threat or an opportunity for employment in the oil and gas industry? Because we talk about, machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics. So all these would make you think about the implications for job opportunities. And also, mind you, this also has implications on revenue generations for host governments and employment. So it's a much bigger topic when you think about not just on a micro level, but also on a macro. And if we can get also the results as soon as they are in, and I'm going to invite Ibilola to give us her view, because I know you talked about the opportunities that digitalization is bringing, but many people fear that digitalization would actually mean less and less opportunities in the oil and gas industry.
Well, thank you so much. Digitization opens up new doors, most especially for us females, because it enables us work remotely, virtually, and we can work from home, work from anywhere. It gives us better work-life balance. It also enables us bridge the gap between industry and academia. I don't need to travel to go and deliver a lecture in a different country. I could actually engage, mentor, coach, support people through Zoom meetings, Microsoft Teams, and it opens huge digital platforms and networks that actually accelerates the development of female talent. Digitization definitely will rid the oil and gas industry of some jobs by improving efficiency and performance, but we do also create new jobs. So we must have a continuous learning and development spirit. We need to align with short courses, capability and competence development initiatives, human capital development initiatives to upskill ourselves digitally. And we need to navigate by engaging the younger workforce, Gen Z, engaging them and listening to them and learning from them. So one thing I think we really need to look at is reverse mentoring. And reverse mentoring for me has always worked. Anytime we got interns in Lonadec, or we had young graduates coming for their attachment for 3 months, 6 months, I normally learn from them. I definitely get them around the table to make presentations about their thoughts, their hopes, their aspirations. I pay very close attention to the young folk in the business and in the office, and I learn from them. So reverse mentoring is an area where we need to begin to engage more as we bridge the gap between industry and academia. But digital transformation is real. It opens a huge wide door of opportunities for all of us, male and female. And I think we just need to put our ears on the ground and be research and development oriented to find those opportunities that we can key into as we align our potential, our talents, and our passions to the new jobs created by the digital transformation.
Carol,
yes, go ahead.
May?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Also, when it comes to the digitalization, Patricia spoke very well about access to the opportunity. And so digitalization and new technologies give that opportunity to women if we start using in the workplace technologies for performance evaluations. And this is one of the things that we promote, that for management positions, this process be more transparent. So, and it is being done based on merit. And so if we start implementing these new solutions, technical solutions at the workforce, for performance of appraisal, it will also remove this problem that we have of opportunity, and will make the process more transparent. Also, I would like to comment on something that Patricia said, that skills and competencies are transferable to other areas. In 2015, I was a bit tired of the stress test. I love this, this expression that it was brought here. And in 2015, I said, I'm done, because I was being constantly overlooked in the promotions. You know, I was in a function for a number of years. I thought it was time for go from first level to the senior management. And I was put so many tests, and when it comes to the promotion, they would give the position to someone that had not only less qualifications as me when it comes to degrees and master, but even experience as a whole, and also in terms of performance. I was delivering constant. I was developing teams, training teams, and we were delivering like this constant. And in 2015, I decided it's enough. I left the company. I was brought in 2016. In 2018, I decided no, I'm leaving. But 2018 was for different reasons. I just thought that I could do a better service as an entrepreneur. And it's when I realized what Patricia said, that yes, our skills are transferable. And the oil sector is so demanding that when you come to the entrepreneur and you become an entrepreneur, everything is so easy. And then when you go across other sectors and you do presentations and you propose strategies, people are like, whoa, really? And has in the oil sector, especially women that are constantly being put under the stress test, because I'm going to use this, it builds us, and we become extraordinary professionals. So what I noticed, and just to conclude, also to talk a little bit of data. Yes, there is more, for instance, in Angola, we represent 52% of the women, and only 36% of the workforce. But we need to start changing and looking at diversity in a different way, because Angola became the oil sector. We were the first oil producer, and then we became the second oil producer. We now produce 34%. In terms of production, we are producing 34%. So we cannot afford not to have a diverse oil sector, you know, because especially our country depends on that. So we need visibility, we need all the technologies, and we need to change the mindset to become, so we can become more competitive. And we have a lot of talent in the oil sector. This is my contribution.
Thank you, Berta. I'm conscious of the time, and we are already went over the time allocated to us, but it's okay, we can go on for another few minutes. And I would like to turn to Eugenia, actually. And before that, I'm glad that I was going to call on Mohammed to have, and it's amazing the kind of perception that we have during this webinar, where everybody sees digitalization as an opportunity. And if I might add to that, that COVID-19, the pandemic, has accelerated tremendous digitalization. However, don't forget and don't overlook cyber threats, because you don't hear often about them, yet they are happening. And this is another area where we need more data and more transparency. But let me turn now to Eugenia. And there's a question, I mean, feel free to answer it, or maybe you can leave us with an important message. But this is a question on which I don't have strong, opinion, because I'm like, you can talk about the pros and cons, but I would like to hear your views, Eugenia, about the quotas. And it's from Maria de Cruz. Thank you, Maria, for sending your question. It's about quotas for companies to promote more women in the oil and gas industry. Do you think that is a good idea, that we need to have quotas? I mean, I know Patricia already mentioned local content policies, and if we had time, we could have gone maybe an hour discussing that. When it comes to quota, do you think it's a good idea? Yes, why? No, why not?
Okay, I think it's challenge. It's a challenging question, because as I mentioned, we are not looking for better opportunities. We are looking for equity, actually. And we also have our local content law, and the local content law doesn't mention that female must have better opportunity, etc. In the end of the day, we are trying to get into a better percentage in terms of women doing business in the oil and gas sector. That's all we want. And we have a lot of female entrepreneurs already providing service for these sectors, but in a very low, I would say, level. Yes, we get the cleaning services. We get the service to provide catering and etc. But we are not involving too much into the technical areas that we would like to. There is a very good movement that has been created here for women in engineer. So we are promoting more females to do engineer courses, to be involved in the engineer sectors, and to show that there is nothing to be afraid. Because since our early ages, we are starting to, the girls are starting to say that I cannot go to that sector because it's male dominated and etc. Even when I was doing my civil engineer course, and when the group of women that already was a few in the classroom, when we have good grades, was because we were privileged, not because we were studying enough to do so. So we're trying to break that ice and say everyone is capable. So young women, go for that technical courses. Do your degree in engineer. And as was mentioned here in the panel, we need to promote a safe environment, social environment, to embrace these girls that are coming from the university and want to have an opportunity in these sectors. So the companies already need to be, it must become a law to the companies have gender equality policies in order to receive the young girls, in order to provide a safe environment, in order for them to understand that they have equal rights, they have the ability to grow in the company that they're working in. So yeah, I will put my opinion in these terms.
Thank you very much, Eugenia. Actually, it's a very, very controversial topic, and we can spend hours discussing that because, I mean, the jury is still out. And as I said, you can have pros and cons, and you can look at countries that have introduced quotas. Some of them are outperforming other countries that don't have, but others are lagging. So it's never really one factor. It's a whole mindset, and many things have to change together. I mean, I can go on and on talking to these wonderful ladies and their insightful experiences and views, but reach the end of the webinar. And I'm going to hand over to Braulio to conclude and adjourn, but I want to thank you all for joining us today. This was a very dynamic discussion. I could see I couldn't keep up, and I'm sorry if I overlooked some questions because I couldn't keep up with all these comments made. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we can continue this conversation on another occasion. Braulio, over to you.
Wow, thank you, Carol. And thank you to all of you in the panel. I kind of feel really out of place. I mean, with your fantastic observations, comments, and I'll say this without any prejudice, please forgive me. your intelligence, you know. And again, you know, apologies for saying something that is always deemed as a very male-oriented comment, but you know, you all talked about looking for role models and for people that you can refer to. I would say really in reverse that you are role models, and you are role models not just for the ladies and young ladies that want to get into the industry, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, you are role models to everybody. To me, you became role models. From what I saw here, it's amazing. I mean, it's an amazing amount of talent. And I'm not just being complimentary. I've been in industry for a while, as you guys know, and you know, we can always recognize talent when we see one. So, and you know, a few additional comments. I was making notes as you guys were going through your discussions. One that Berta mentioned earlier in the background was that perhaps would be a good thing to have men being part of this type of discussion. So we could have you know, a dynamic interaction. Some questions that are addressed to you and you answer, it would be good to see, you know, how we would answer those same questions in a panel like that. Yeah, you know, I'm part of the organization. We're taking notes, and perhaps in the future would be good to, you know, we will be thinking about that format where we have men in the panel to have them also answer some of those questions. You know, what do we men see as challenges to women joining our teams? I've seen challenges, and then I'm being having worked offshore with men, and later on in the career as women started coming in to offshore installations, I could see challenges for those women right away. It's, you know, it's challenging to say the very least, not just as Kamia mentioned, to be amongst men and trying to prove yourself, but you know, all the other, I would say, physical constraints, not by nature of your muscles, but by nature of the environment itself. So, and Patricia, you know, talked about enablers and barriers. Yes, it's, you know, there is also an element of some of your successes need to come from you. As much as we men can support, as much as organizations, society are supporting, in fact, you know, there is a general change in the mindset, but you know, you need to keep focus. And you know that better than me, but it's good advice for the youngsters in the audience, and women for that matter in the audience. You have to be focused. Just like we men, for success, we need to be focused on what we want to achieve. You women, perhaps a little bit more than us, need to keep that same focus to be successful. But success is there. It's possible by what we see here. There is no way, no reason to think otherwise. Passion, you know, you keep focused, but you need to have passion. You need to be passionate about what you do. And I saw that in your addresses, passion, enthusiasm. You know, you all look very enthusiastic about what you're doing, very confident. But you know, it sounds like things that I used to hear when I was a young engineer starting my career, and that applies to all of us. But you know, applies to all. So I would finish by thanking the audience. Now, we have had a tremendous number of participants, and also lots of questions. Probably some have gone unanswered, but you know, we'll continue with this interaction and make sure that all the answers pending, all the questions rather, pending will be in some form addressed by the people that, the panelists that the questions were addressed to, or for us, the organizers, if some come to us. And no enough words to thank the panelists. I mean, Carol as the moderator was fantastic. I was actually making notes and asking my team, can we have Carol at the conference in November? Can we bring all these wonderful ladies to the conference? It would be fantastic to have this debate live in front of an audience. I'm sure you would steal the conference and make everybody talk about women in industry, challenges, opportunities, enablers, barriers, I mean, what have you. So many thanks to all of you for the fantastic work that you guys did, for the preparation that was behind, for the team behind the scenes. It's always very challenging and we get nervous, but hey, you ladies did well. And I'll have to mention every single one by name. So, everybody knows who you are and can reach out. Eugenia, Patricia Borges in the background, Camia, we're making jokes about Camia being nervous. She didn't sound nervous 1 minute. I mean, it was fantastic. Patricia Simon Hart, hey, you are a leader, you are an inspiration. Ibilola, fantastic. You again, these young entrepreneurs in the group, Ibilola and Berta, you guys are leading the way for all the other ladies. And of course, Carol, you're great. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed rest of the day, and we'll be in touch. And again, you probably should be a lady wrapping up this because you were so good. I feel kind of out of place, but hey, I'm here and thank you once again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah,
you.
bye.
Bye.